Everyone is tired of such hackneyed horror cliches as jump scares in video games, although they can scare each of us, albeit for a short time. The real horror lies in suspense, the expectation of something terrible and unknown. When the person himself comes up with frightening images and possible situations, and one of these products of our imagination is the feeling of being watched. Even in a calm environment, it may begin to seem to us that we are not alone at all. Something is watching us, hiding from our gaze. But sometimes it turns out to be true. And today I will tell you about 7 games in which something really observes the player. As you may have noticed, this is the second part of the games in which you are being watched, and it comes out solely thanks to you and your comments. And if you have not seen the first part, then follow the hint. We begin. Shrek 2. This is a simple arcade based on, oddly enough, the second part of Shrek. It turned out to be quite interesting for its time. Absolutely nothing terrible happens in it because the game is childish, but some can still remember one rather frightening moment. It's hard not to notice. Playing for the first time as a donkey in the forest, a cat in boots will follow us, and you can only see a silhouette from him, which only makes this moment scarier. My Summer Car. My Summer Car is by no means a horror game, but an adventure car simulator. But the game is full of its terrible myths. In fact, the game is quite calm, in which you have to survive, communicate with local residents, repair cars, and of course, drive them. But with the onset of darkness, this calmness can be doubted. The nights in the game are too dark and quiet, which makes you to start worrying. No wonder a large number of players believe that My Summer Car has something in common with horror, which is expressed in a huge number of scary Easter eggs. At night, in the house of the protagonist, doors can be opened on their own. A flying UFO can be seen in the sky, the spirits of dead animals can be heard in a burnt barn. But what interests us most is the ghosts. In an abandoned mansion whose owner committed suicide, objects can be seen moving around on their own. And with luck, even the owner's spirit. Around midnight, in a burnt-out house, with the help of photographic film, you can capture the ghost of the father of the Merchant 20 who died in a fire, observing the player. Stalker Photographer. This is a global mod for Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. It introduces a completely new story campaign that takes place even before the events of the main game. The main character is a certain photographer, an experienced war correspondent who knows how to handle weapons. He comes to the zone for the next reportage, but everything turns out to be not at all so simple, because the plot has a lot of its own secrets. The atmosphere in the zone has always been quite gloomy and oppressive. Even a gun in hand cannot give confidence in the local scenery, where anything can happen that defies the laws of logic. Wandering around the zone alone at night, you can easily catch yourself that you might be being watched, and it is not clear which is better, whether it is one of the bandits or some unknown creature. In the modification of the photographer, this is more than true. Sometimes, far from you, you can see some observers examining the player through binoculars. If you shot him or get too close, he will simply disappear. Why they follow not only the photographer, but also other people, remains to be seen in the story. Stranger Never Sleep Again. It's an indie horror game based on its developer's most recurring nightmare. You wake up at night in your house and notice someone outside the window in your yard, and it seems that this someone is staring right at you with a knife in his hand. All the while you were sleeping, a maniac was watching you. And do you really think that the windows and doors of your house can save from a real killer who is about to break into your room? All that remains for you is to run away from here and not get into the eyes of a stranger. But is it easy to do this in such cramped house? watch to the most impressive, which means that you were definitely interested. And therefore, I will be very grateful if you subscribe to my channel and like it, because only in this way can I understand that you like the video and I should make the third part. In addition, I will be very grateful if you subscribe to my Patreon. I don't force anyone, of course, it's just that my channel has reached the possibility of monetization, but you know for what reason I can't connect it. Well, now we continue. Undertale. In the comments under the first part, you wrote me a lot about Undertale, and I heard you. So, Undertale is a well-known role-playing game. According to the plot, the human child Frisk falls under the ground, where imprisoned monsters live. He has to find a way out of here, and along the way, get acquainted with the local inhabitants, and out of all of them, one stands out more than the rest. And no, I'm not talking about Gaston now, I mean Flowey. This isn't a monster or a person, but just a flower that does not have a soul. Most importantly, he knows that he is in a computer game and can speak directly to the player. But nevertheless, he is not omnipotent, and in order to know what Frisk is doing, he has to secretly following him. Very often, turning back sharply, you can see Flowey burrowing into the ground, who obviously didn't expect us to notice him. Believe it or not, the surveillance in Undertale does not end there. If during the game you kill Papyrus, then in the battle with Smurena the following comment may appear: a hooded figure is watching what is happening from afar, which clearly alludes to Sans following the player in anticipation of an hour of revenge for his brother. PT. It's a standalone horror game that actually turned out to be just a playable teaser for a cancelled game called Silent Hills by Konami. The essence of the game is to simply walk along the monotonous, looped corridor, which somehow changes every time. The main obstacle of the protagonist is the ghost of Lisa, a murdered pregnant woman. She does not always attack the main character. Sometimes the ghost just watches him appearing outside the window or on the second floor. However, after the camera was hacked, it turned out that Lisa was always watching the player. After receiving the flashlight, she will spawn behind the player and stay there until the very end of the game. From here, a certain shadow is taken from a tall figure located behind, but you won't be able to see it no matter how fast you spin. The Forest. A real classic of survival games has not bypassed surveillance either. The peninsula in the forest has never been a lonely place. It's inhabited by numerous groups of aborigines who does not disdain to eat human flesh, in addition to which you can meet the most real mutants. The days in the game are still relatively calm, but at night the natives come out to hunt. However, sometimes in the distance you can see a strange red man who is not going to attack the protagonist at all, but simply stands and watches him. His name is Matthew Cross, and he is not cannibal at all. In the past, Matthew Cross was a scientist, but he had problems in the family. His daughter, Megan, contracted a terrible disease, and his wife filed for divorce. Then he received an offer to get a job in an illegal campaign called Sahara Therapeutics, which conducted experiments on people where he had a chance to cure Megan. He agrees, having previously kidnapped her and killed his wife. This campaign owned an entire underground laboratory, but as you can imagine, everything did not go according to plan. Due to an accident, the scientist's daughter dies and he is fired. He goes crazy and lets cannibals into the laboratory, and he paints himself red to look like the deity of the local inhabitants. Now his main goal is to revive Megan, for which he needs the son of the protagonist named Timmy. If in the game you manage to notice him and get close, he will simply run away from you. It is important for Matthew to know what protagonist is doing, because he can interfere with the execution of his plan. And this was the last game from our today's selection. If you have been watching video games too, be sure to tell me about it in the comments, which could lead to making the third part of this video. And the best way to thank the author, of course, is to like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget about my Patreon. Thank you all, and good luck avoiding surveillance in video games.